I was sitting under a tree by a lake. It was a warm spring day, and a cool breeze seemed to rush over me. In that moment, the sun seemed to eclipse with the water. As I gazed into this new horizon line, I took a small stone and rubbed it in a circular motion on a large rock. With that, the smell of flowers, and looking into this horizon line, I entered a deep trance. And as I entered that trance, I noticed a figure rise up from the water. She was in a pure white dress. And though she came from the water, she was not wet. As I saw this, I knew exactly what she was. She was a water spirit. She reached out with a smile and said in a voice like soft music, "Come with me." Now, I had heard of these water spirits before, but I had never seen one. But I've heard stories of what they do to people, weary travelers that come across them. They cannot be trusted, for they have a tendency to drown people. Even people from my own village. So I said to this water spirit, "No." She said to me again, in a louder voice, still smiling, "Come with me." And I again said to her, "No." Her smile seemed to waver. And then she explained to me how she thought I would make a good husband, and she had chosen me, and that we would be very happy, and she would bear me wonderful children in her father's home. I said to her, "But I already have a child, a daughter, and a wife. I am already married. I will not go with you." In that moment I stopped the motion with the rock. She became very stern and said in a booming voice, "You will come with me, or you will become very ill." And then she disappeared from my sight. In that moment I left, went back to my village to warn them of what I had seen. But as I crossed the threshold of my village, I became dizzy. And I walked slowly to my home. And as I entered my home, the dizziness increased, and I saw all manner of terrible creatures dancing in front of me. Suddenly, a rush of sickness came over me, and everything became black. I'm not sure how long I was out, but as I awoke, I felt extremely ill, pain all over my body. I wasn't sure how long I was ill. A day? A week? Maybe longer? But as my illness reached its peak, the water spirit showed herself again, beside my bed. She put her hand out to me and said again, in her soft voice, "Come with me." I wasn't sure if I could trust her, but I wasn't sure how much longer I would be sick if I did not. So I agreed, and I took her hand, and in a rush we entered the lake. I was afraid I may drown, but no, I could breathe fine. And at the bottom of the lake I saw a home, a large home, blinding light shining out from inside. It was a home made of seaweed and all manner of things that you would find at the bottom of such a deep lake. I entered that home, and the blinding light, which seemed to come from these glowing crystals, became brighter. Eventually it was so bright that I could not open my eyes. I closed them. But I knew where I was going, for the water spirit had me by the arm. As we stopped, I heard a voice that I did not recognize, a voice in a completely different language. This I could tell, was the water spirit's father. He was the officiant at our wedding. He spoke for a long while, and as he finished, the blinding light seemed to disappear, and the water spirit's grip on my arm stopped. Then I found her standing right in front of me, with 2 children, one in each hand. She told me with a smile, "You have given me what I asked for. You may now return to your village." And in that very moment she disappeared from my sight, and I realized I could no longer breathe. I began to thrash in the water. Not sure how deep I was, I climbed up. Eventually, hands gripped me by the arm and pulled me up. And then again everything went black. I awoke once again in my own home. My wife and child exactly as I had left them the night before marrying the water spirit. They told me that I was found in the lake nearly drowned, but that is not what concerned them. What concerned them was what I had asked to do, just as I had exited the water. I asked to be taken to my brother's home, and my rescuers did so, taking me there immediately. As I entered, I put my hands on his 2 small children, and I did not remember at first. But as I remembered touching these children on the head, I remember wishing that the coolness of the water that entered me, that cured my illness, would rush over them. And suddenly they were well. Ever since that day, I have become known as Shaman in my village, a magical healer or medicine man. I've cured almost everyone at this point, all thanks to the water spirit, who still visits me in my dreams, teaching me how to use herbs and magic for my magical cures.
I met her on an internet chat line. She had her photo there and I was taken with her immediately. Red hair, my weakness. Green eyes, looking so much in control. I said hi, asked where she was from, where she worked. She was very warm in her responses, so I sent her a private message saying I thought she looked beautiful in her photo. She returned the message saying thank you and added blushing. Blushing? Could a woman this beautiful still be shy? Well, I kept up my flirtations, and when she was getting ready to leave, she said she hoped that we could do this again in the future. And the next time I was on the chat line, I looked for her. Usually when I'm on a chat line, I'm talking to other people, reading conversations, and time passes very quickly. Waiting for her, however, time passed very slowly. It was driving me crazy. And then she showed up. I immediately sent her a private message saying hi and asking how her day was. She responded by saying that she was very depressed, and she wanted to know if I would create a private room for her and I to discuss things. Would I? I immediately created a room, used both our online names as a password, and invited her in. While I was waiting, I added a description to the room. Large living room with a plush carpet, huge couch, fireplace, candles providing warm lighting. I was going to add a bucket of ice and champagne, but she said she just wanted to talk, so I decided against it. When she entered the room, she immediately admired the decor, and I invited her to sit on the couch. I asked her what was troubling her, and she said she had a very difficult day at work. Everybody was being very demanding and acting crazy. I just need to relax, she said. I need somebody to take care of me right now. Well, I saw my opening. I typed that I moved closer to her on the couch and wrapped her up in a tight, close hug. Let me know when you want me to let go, I said. I don't ever want you to let me go, she responded. I kissed her on the lips to let her know that I cared and to comfort her. She returned the kiss, adding passionately, "This got me very aroused. Here was this beautiful woman responding to me. I pressed on, fondling and caressing her, and she did the same to me. Now, I know, we were just typing words, but I got incredibly aroused, and I told her as much. She told me she was feeling the same. 'Undress me,' she asked, and I began describing taking her clothes off piece by piece, and she described doing the same to me. She said that as I was taking off her virtual clothing, she was removing her clothing in the real world, and asked if I was doing the same thing. Well, I didn't want to lie, so there we were, at our computers, naked in front of our screens, making love to each other through the phone lines. The whole experience was incredibly sensual and erotic. And as we laid there in each other's arms, in front of the fire, she said she thought she loved me and hoped that we could do this again and again. And we did. We met several times a week, having incredible erotic adventures. Sometimes she was on her period and all we did was hold each other and talk. But sometimes we did things that we never would have done in the real world. But then things changed. I don't think I grew tired of her. I mean, it was always great to be around her, and I truly did love her, as I told her time and again. But she became more demanding. She wanted to meet more often, which was a problem because I was already spending entirely too much time online and not enough time with my wife and kids. Also, my cyber lover was in a different time zone, meaning that I had to stay up very late to meet with her, which meant when I went to work the next day, I was incredibly groggy. And recently, things have only gotten worse. She's been suggesting that she wants a real-world relationship. And since she doesn't know I'm married, she thinks I'm a good prospect. I'm afraid one day she's going to find my number. What if my wife answers? I mean, I've read articles about people who've gotten divorced over things like this, and I don't want to see that happen. My marriage isn't perfect, but I don't want to go through that for the sake of the kids. To make matters worse, I have a business trip next month that takes me right where she is going to be. Should I meet her? Well, the positive to all of this is I've never been more confident. Even though I've been pulling away from people close to me, when I go on business trips, I flirt with waitresses, flight attendants, secretaries. I never would have done that before. I find a great strength in being able to affect people just by paying attention to them. I just never knew a casual flirtation would cause me so much trouble.
The first time it happened was one winter night. I was lying in bed, deep under the covers. My wife and I, we like to sleep with the heat turned down and the windows open to get fresh air. But it was a bitterly cold night, so we had the blanket, the sheet, and the comforter all put up to our necks. I was in a deep sleep. But that's the trouble when you have the window open. A noise from outside could wake me up. It wasn't a noise, really. It was more of a pressure on the ears. I sat up and looked out the window to localize it, and I put my glasses on. Even in pitch blackness, I always feel like I can hear better when I have my glasses on. I know it's weird, but it just seems that way. Just then a light started shining through my window. I had seen that kind of thing before when an emergency helicopter landed in the street outside of my house after an accident. Anyways, I turned to my wife to ask her if she had heard the sound or had seen the light, but she was in a deep sleep. I tried to wake her by calling her name, but I couldn't hear my own voice. I thought, it must have been the sound just drowning it out, but I couldn't hear myself either. Just then I looked back to the window and I saw these creatures in my room. They were looking around and looking at me. They had gray skin and huge black bottomless eyes. One of them went over to my wife to take a closer look and dropped his head all the way down to her face. I tried to move to push him away, but I couldn't move. The others came and looked at me, and they looked up and down and looked at each other, nodded, and just walked back towards the window. Just then the lights got brighter and I could feel myself being lifted, floating off the bed and towards the window. The light grew brighter and surrounded me, and I could feel myself drifting towards their ship. I passed out. When I woke up, I was in pain. It was a large room, all chrome and silver and brightly lit, like a dentist's office. The creatures were still around my bed, except it wasn't my bed. It was an operating table. And they were poking me, prodding me with these instruments, taking blood samples and skin samples, and even bone samples, I think, because one of the needles was very deep and the pain was horrible. And then one of them just poked this needle up my nose and sucked something out. I'm pretty certain it was a brain sample. I passed out, thinking of these creatures doing these things to me. When I woke again, I was met with more pain. I was lying face down on the table, and I could feel them probing me from behind. I still couldn't move, but I managed to make this moan of pain. They just stopped and stared at me. Their other experimental subjects might not have made any noise before. At this, they stopped, and they turned me over and helped me sit up onto the table. And then they looked at the door, and this taller version of the creatures walked in. I knew her at once to be female, and I could tell already that she was the leader, perhaps a captain of the ship. She walked over to me and stood in front of me. She didn't speak to me necessarily, she just communicated with me directly through telepathy. She told me to be calm, that everything was okay, that I was a major part of their important plan. She repeated to me that I should be calm and let nothing worry me. And then I noticed that I had an erection. There wasn't anything sexual about her necessarily, but still. I looked into her huge black bottomless eyes and felt stimulation, and I ejaculated. I don't know if she touched me. Maybe she was using her telepathic powers to do so. I felt an enormous release of energy and just passed out. When I awoke, I was back in my bed and my wife was still asleep next to me. I got up and I went to the bathroom. I checked myself for the holes in my body, but there were none. They were all sealed, like they didn't want the scars to show. I looked in the mirror and I saw blood trickling out of my nose. Now, I haven't had a nosebleed since I was a kid. It must have been a result of the examination. I didn't tell anyone about my experience, not even my wife. They all would have called me crazy. I wondered myself, too. But it just seemed so real. I thought about it often over those several months. And it happened again, just the same way. The sound, the light, the creatures in my room, floating off my bed into the ship, waking up being examined, more gently this time. They led me through the ship, and I saw many rooms, and I saw others who were being taken. They led me to the captain, and she was in this room where there was these blocks that were with room to sit on. There were small creatures sitting there, looking at what looked like computer screens, like they were in school or something. The captain took me over to one of the little ones and pointed at him. The small creature looked up at me. The captain told me telepathically that this is my son, a result of my sperm being mixed with the egg of one of her people. The little one looked up at me and showed no signs of recognition. Then she led me into another room, this one larger and darker, and there were many of the creatures there. She told me to sit down, and I did. And when I did, the creatures started to dance. And somehow their dance created this vision, like I was watching some big screen television. In it, I saw a vision of the future. The world on fire. Forests gone. Natural disasters like earthquakes and tidal waves. The earth just died. I don't have a better word for it. And then the vision changed, and I saw another version of the future. This one was paradise. There was no violence, greenery everywhere, the air was clean, the cities were clean, everyone everywhere lived in peace and prosperity. I sat there watching that vision, and I never wanted it to end. I've been taken several times since then. Each time they examine me quickly and then they take me to that room and they start to dance again. I know that both of these visions aren't the true version of the future, but just possibilities. And that we must avoid the one and embrace the other. When I see the vision of the destruction of the world, I feel ill. But when I see the vision of paradise, I'm at total peace with the entire world. And I have this overwhelming urge to share this vision with the rest of the world.